have with us Dr. Dag Eric Berg, Associate Professor of Political Science at Molde University College, Norway, to deliver the inaugural lecture. Dr. Berg has been previously affiliated with universities of Bergen, Essex, Suez, London, and Center for Modern Indian Studies, Göttingen. He is the author of the book Dynamics of Caste and Law, Dalits, Oppression and Constitutional Democracy in India, published by the Cambridge University Press last year. Professor Berg, we are very honored to have you with us here. The virtual floor is yours.
So, thank you very much indeed. Are you able to hear me all, or?
Yes, we can hear, sir.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much. It's a tremendous privilege, an honor for me to speak to you and to be invited to this series. And I noticed that you have some very interesting scholars who will be speaking to you over the next couple of days and week. So congratulations to you and for this to establishing this series, and for me it's a tremendous privilege to interact with a group of people like this, and I haven't spent so much time in Kerala as I wish I could. I'd hoped that we could I could explore the state more, but I've had some very pleasant and very interesting experiences in Kerala, and I've been very fortunate to have friends and colleagues like Sajan, who is now the organizer behind this, and also other people. So I will in the next couple of minutes or half an hour or so, I will be talking to you about my book, which is actually and it's correct. It was published last year, but that was online. So officially, it's a publication from this year. So it was printed in in December of last year, but it's like a 2020 publication. So it's actually a new book of the year. But so what I would like to start with is to explain about, or to highlight the very situation where we're placed at the moment. We have in my view, we have a very the democracy is on a critical juncture. So you have, on the one hand, you have a post-colonial state which has been committed to a constitution developed from 46 to 50, and it's been a bedrock of several very significant policies that I mean, in the global perspective, it's quite remarkable what has been accomplished with reservation, equal opportunity policies for lower caste, scheduled caste particularly, and scheduled tribes from the beginning of the 1950s, and a firm commitment to equality in the very preamble, which provides like an understanding of the Constitution. So it would be misleading to say that the preamble doesn't matter, because it matters a lot. It gives an understanding of how the laws should be interpreted. So it gives, like, what one could say is a hermeneutical understanding of or hermeneutical horizon to understand the Constitution. So equality has been interesting both from I mean, when it comes to secularism and reservation or equal opportunity policies, but then since 2014, we witnessed quite a remarkable political transformation with new articulations of hegemony and a commitment to make the Indian democracy and state more organized along Hindutva lines, So we have like experienced what David Bluden, an American scholar, has referred to as making India Hindu, and which in a sense is a transformation of the way in which one has navigated between religions in the country, but also in the situation one has, as you know, lots of rhetorical redescriptions, which is, I mean, to explain about things differently, when distinguish between those who are proud of this nation and those who are anti-national, but then also in the process of stating that people are anti-national, this tag is linked up and used to against those who are defending the constitution. So this is, and on top of this rhetorical and political situation and discourse, we have like constitutional changes, and quite significant changes, like establishing religious criteria in when it comes to immigrants from neighboring countries, which goes against the center of the constitution and its commitment to equality. So we have like, so this is the situation, as you all of, I mean, you are, I mean, I've been writing a book, but you are all experts. I mean, you're witnessing this live and around you in your own society, So you're the experts. My book deals with this very process of continuity and change. So the book looks like this. I've been circulating. So this is my book. I've been circulating the flyer, or I've been sending it to the organizer. But it's one of the questions that has been interesting for me, is how there has been a long history of making demands for improvements. And many of these demands result in new laws and policies. So we have like lots of laws, but there is a continuity and change. I mean, there are some continuities some laws that have been there for a long period of time, and it tends to shape, create a pulse, but still a pulse. I mean, where the Indian state will have to follow, in the sense that one has established routines and laws to implement these policies. But then there have also been a number of demands for improvement, and my book is an attempt to explain about the learning processes. So you have like a number of, I mean, as you all know, I mean, one has a lot of discussions, and one could consider. So my idea is also to look at the way in which concerns have been articulated and also resulted in changes in the constitution, and have like just this past month we had the new judgment on subcategorization of the scheduled castes category, which I'm also discussing in the book. But I mean, since my book is published before this latest judgment from a month ago, I'm not able to. I will only be talking about it now and not in the book, but it's discussed in the book. Okay, so in order to get the start on understanding of caste, as you, I mean, you could obviously explain about this in very elegant ways, but I think we could think of I mean, a conventional starting point is the point to the reference to how in the Vedas, in the Rig Vedas, about how the cosmic man Purusha was divided into 4 parts, and this is like the story behind the Varna system. You have the Brahmins from the head, Kshatriya from the shoulders, then Vaishyas, the merchants, as farmers and businessmen and traders. And then one has the Shudra caste from the legs, one has like later explanations, like in the Law of Manuus, which is far more hierarchical. But the story about the Varnas from the Vedas is like a point of departure to explain about why one has notions of purity and why there's a grading and hierarchy established. In my book, I try to avoid just talking about hierarchy. It's part because hierarchy is very much confined to and justified within a religious tradition. So I do discuss this in the book, but my approach to it is to look at the articulations of hegemony. So one has an element of we have ongoing changes in the caste system, and hierarchy is part of it. But it's not sufficient to just use that use hierarchy. So I try to supplement this. So in the book, I have like I have like when I started working on India more than 15 years ago, when I was a graduate student, I wanted to learn about how a constitutional democracy like India was able to deal with big inequalities. So I didn't have many ideas about India at that time. So my point of departure was to think I should address the question, how does a constitutional democracy, liberal constitutional democracy, address inequality? So this was my starting point. Then I very soon ended up with this big question, caste, which I've been trying to understand and still trying to learn. And I'm in the process of learning new things all the time on this topic, which is complex. But then in the process, I learned at least two things. I mean, first of all, that the Dalit community and their situation reflects the oppression and the violence that often comes with thinking in hegemonic and hierarchical terms. And so that exclusion was significant also because the Indian constitution and this very history that I'm discussing in the book has many legal aspects, and there are plenty of legal cases to study, which you should know. But in this process of dealing with this question, I also discovered that there is a big debate about how caste and race, or casteism and racism, compare. So along with this book, there is a related question, which I'm not discussing specifically in the book. I do hint and provide some indications about how to proceed along on that question too. So the book is structured with like 7 chapters and an introduction, where I introduced like Ambedkar's understanding of caste, his theory of caste, which I think historically has been not been taken too seriously. I think today it is a more it's a better way to understand caste than many of the conventional theories. So we have like from the 50s and before that, we have like European scholars known as famous ones like Max Weber, who wrote about religion in India, and Louis Dumont, a Frenchman, who wrote about hierarchy, about caste as a system of hierarchy. I think Ambedkar offers a better approach. These are significant authors, but Ambedkar offers a better approach to understand caste as a system of domination. So I explain about that in the book, but then I also explain about how one develops new laws related to untouchability, and how the focus on untouchability was not very adequate to address many questions. And then I discuss in detail two significant massacres in Andhra Pradesh, which happened in 1985, which was in Karamchedu, and then another one in 91 in Chundur in Guntur district. These are significant also in terms of the legal experiences, because one was occurred before the Scheduled Tribes Prevention of Atrocity Act, and the second one was after, and both of them have a significant legal sides to it, and so they are part of like a longer history with legal discussions. So then I carry on. I could explain about a lot about these, but I will jump to one. So I have like a number of chapters here, and I also discuss how powerful actors use the court processes, are often those who would win in court, and also how the state, the goals in the law will often not be followed up because of the institutional processes. So I use institutional theory in order to explain this better. I mean, because the outcome, like in public administration, you learn about the organizations. So and the intention behind the law will not always, and behind an organization will not always be what is implemented, because in the process of implementation there will be actors involved, and these will redirect the goal or understand the goal to be different. And that's the type of theory that I use in order to explain how and why powerful actors are those who I mean, that the intentions in the social order is that which is more significant than in the law as such, and for a number of systematic but also accidental reasons. But I wanted to. It's a pity that I'm not able to be with you, because then I could experience this audience much better. So I wish I was in Kerala, but I will have to imagine that I'm there with you. But unfortunately, in this pandemic, we're not able to travel. We will have to be isolated in a sense to make sure that we are healthy and whatnot. Unfortunately, it's much better to be there and to have discussed this with you in where you are at the moment. I wanted to continue with start and highlight one central feature, which is very or topic, which is often, at least for, I mean, like people from in my country, we understand that we could often hear that that the caste system was abolished at the time of independence, and that's because when I wanted to abolish untouchability, I think this is also, I mean, historically there have been many learning processes like from in the constitutional history on this point. So there, but the idea that untouchability was abolished was more like a declaration in the Constituent Assembly. And what is interesting, and many of the interesting things with this discussion, is that one put untouchability in quotation marks. So, and why was this discussed? In many ways, we should keep in mind that there were discussions about how from anti-caste leaders like Ambedkar, they wanted to address problems of caste. So in a sense, it was a reaction. One wanted to respond to this, or the way in which it was responded to was to declare that untouchability in any form should be abolished and prohibited. And these are contradictions. If you abolish it, why should you prohibit it? So in a sense, there were some inaccuracies at that point, but it's like a beginning of discussing this problem. But one of the problems with it is that in one sense, you could consider untouchability as an effect of caste. So you have cause and effect. The cause is caste, which is creating untouchability practices. So if you remove untouchability, it's like removing the symptom or removing the effect. But at the same time, it's irrelevant. Untouchability is integral to caste, but it also has a gender dimension. What is, I mean, like in Kerala, you have the Sabarimala shrine in Lord Ayappa temple, and in 2018, as you should know much better than I do, we had this Supreme Court judgment with 5 judges that used Article 17, the abolition of untouchability, to argue that women who are at the menstruating age should be allowed to enter the temple. So in a sense, I mean, caste has a very strong gender dimension, and this case shows that it's not only about the most oppressed communities; it's part of the overall practices. Then you also have untouchability practices in other religions, as you know, with graveyards in churches where you have separate graveyards. So it has some relevance. But one of the big problems in the post-colonial period was that there were a number of atrocities, starting out in Kilmani in 68 in Tamil Nadu, and these were incidents, very brutal incidents, which could not be addressed properly by using this Article 17 and that framework, which resulted in a framework of more like a civil wrongs framework. So that's there. But before we come to that, we could just recapitulate some of the achievements in the early post-colonial state. You had compensatory discrimination, and then or reservation, and then which was created for the scheduled caste and not for the other backward castes at the national level. But then there were no significant land reforms. What is interesting with Kerala is the history of land reforms before India's independence. But I don't deal with the agricultural question very specifically. It's not part of the constitutional setup in that sense, and related to the scheduled caste in a sense. But the fact that it's not addressed there is significant. Okay, so let's get back to this history of the massacres. With these many atrocities, there were problems with how to use the law. So one wanted to address cases of caste-based violence, and even the police. I mean, one of the significant constitutional experts in India, Upendra Bakshi, he was invited to discuss this with the police, and the police was concerned about how should one address this, because they were not able to use the law properly. Then we also have these discussions. I mean, in the planning process at the central level, and I've been explained over the course of my research that there was at some point in the middle of the 80s there were a discussion about how to improve this legislation, where one started with a focus on untouchability. How should we define untouchability? What was argued in that committee was that the focus on untouchability is not that relevant. we need to replace the focus with a focus on atrocity. What is an atrocity? This was quite, this way of changing the terminology was also important in order to make some development legally. So what this was, this corresponded with the development legally, where one avoided like a civil wrongs approach and moved the piece of legislation under criminal law more specifically. So there have been these significant changes, and the scheduled tribes prevention of atrocity is exactly that. It's a piece of legislation under criminal law. Okay, so I will jump. I noticed that I have time is running fast, and I would be very happy to interact with you soon. But in order to understand the persistence of costs, I've been looking at several theories, and which could explain these processes more precisely. And I think there is no better alternative and starting point than Bimrao Ambedkar. As you know, was a significant and extremely well known for his contribution to the Indian Constitution. He was a very experienced leader at the time that he led the Constituent Assembly, so he was quite central to the deliberations in Constituent Assembly. But he's also interesting from a social science point of view, in the sense that he offers and develops very systematic concepts. And when combining that with contemporary social and political theory, it's quite significant and very interesting. So he has some very innovative concepts. As you know, he's known for a text called The Annihilation of Caste, which is his most revolutionary text, more like an utopian text. He wanted to annihilate the caste system as such. So he has two suggestions. One is that one should abolish the belief in caste and then introduce a new democratic foundation. What I find interesting in this is how he describes a belief in caste as a reflection of ontology. So what I'm arguing in the book is that there's a grip of caste which makes it important to, I mean, which functions as an ontological drive, and which often sustains many of these processes of caste and also violence. But then he also has another concept which is using frequently, and I have a favorite passage in volume 5. Where he's explaining about graded inequality as a conscious system of grading and inequality. And he's making this statement that there is a distinction, as you know, between the touchables and the untouchables. Untouchables cannot be touched, but this is the equivalent to saying that you have somebodies and nobodies. This is like at an existential level, it's an ontological distinction. What is interesting with him is that he's not only saying this, he's also combining this with inequality. So in the book, I have like two concepts which I'm introducing. At least, I mean, two main concepts. One is mechanism of oppression, and the other one is the grip of caste. So mechanism of oppression is to explain about how, like a very common sense explanation, that upward social mobility and atrocity would often be coming together. So these are, I mean, these legally, these will come under different. I mean, these are related to different aspects of the Constitution. What I'm, I mean, taking a step back, I mean, methodologically, I think it's important to step outside of the legal framework in order to understand the relation between caste and law. So I would not be satisfied with just reading laws and judgments, but it's in order to understand how this is related, one needs an ethnographic, more informed understanding and to understand the logics in the oppression. And that's, so my proposition in this context is to say that it's a mechanism of oppression which explains about, which highlights how upward social mobility, for instance, coming from reservation, often would be coming with atrocity. Then I'm concerned with the time, but I have like a final thing, final point, because Sajjan was suggesting that I should also talk about the development policies, and I'm happy to do that. I did a study at the University of London, and as you mentioned in the beginning, with the professor who worked on caste and development, and I looked at a number of policies related to these communities, scheduled castes particularly. And what strikes me is that there's a big difference between the regional level and the central level. So at the beginning of, I mean, as we talk about the constitution, you have a strong emphasis on equal opportunity, which is reservations. Everybody talks about reservation. Land reforms were struck down. So these larger social justice issues have been removed. The focus is on reservation and education, which has its promises and which is important. But still, there are multiple ways to create development. And what struck me was how there was at the beginning of the post-colonial period, there was an attempt to establish a special officer. There was a mandate for a special officer who should look into to develop and design development schemes for the scheduled caste, and this is a mandate that comes out from Article 338 in the Constitution. And this mandate was expanded. First, it was like just one person, and one person in that huge country at the central level. But then in the late 70s, there were a development of this mandate into a larger office, and now it's much bigger. What is interesting, especially with Kerala, is that you had Kerala was one of the states which was the first to establish a so-called scheduled caste development corporation. So Punjab was first in 71, and then Kerala in 72, and then Tamil Nadu and Andhra in 74. Then it becomes, and these are scheduled caste development corporations, which have different names in different states. And then in Bihar and elsewhere, Orissa, I think, they established it 78, which is when one has introduced or observed this at this central level. So there is an interaction between the central and the regional level, which is very interesting when it comes to these development policies. But I think at the same time, there is, with inequalities, you have a very different situation today than at the time of independence, because of what you call privatization or globalization worldwide. And because the opening of markets and for trade has created across the globe a huge middle class, and you have greater inequalities coming as a result of globalization, and this situation creates a number of challenges. First of all, you have directly when you had privatization in India, some castes were affected very, very badly, like the Mariga caste, which is like a scheduled caste big scheduled castes in Andhra Pradesh. They were producing sandals of leather, and with plastic sandals, these were outcompeted because plastic sandals made of big manufacturers were able to supply that at a cheaper rate, and then also providing better quality. So the medical cost was, I mean, with this instance, I mean, it shows how liberalization of trade affected that community. And that community has like a big movement, which is trying to subcategorize the shell costs category in order to get more members of that community and make them more able to get a reservation. And so this is what has been the new Supreme Court case in this. At the same time, I wonder if there is a larger picture. I mean, it's far more complex. So if a reservation should be the solution to everything, I think that's far too narrow in the current sense. But speaking more broadly, we could have think of argument made by an American scholar, American-based scholar, Dan Roderick, who you might know, who is arguing that with globalization there is a paradox. We have a weakening of elected assemblies, and the democracies could be weakened. So I think we're facing very, very different questions when it comes to inequalities. So I will try to conclude now and look forward with a few points. So and we could get back to discuss some of the points here. But one question that I started out with, and which I could highlight, is how does, I mean, my question was, how does a liberal democracy address embedded inequalities? And legally, you have like at least three approaches. You have like equal opportunity and reservation, then the prohibition of untouchability, which is there. Then we also have the Prevention of Atrocity Act. But what is interesting with caste is how many of the crucial issues are outside of the legal domain. So the intra-caste marriages, marrying within the caste, is very significant for the reproduction of caste. Then also property relations. I mean, property is a huge thing, creating which is relevant to the reproduction of inequalities and the production of inequalities. So these are substantial topics to keep in mind for this question of caste and law. And then a second question is, what is the future of the democratic constitutional state? And I'm sure you have many clever observations on this. But I think, I mean, based on my experience, my limited, what I would be confident in saying is that, regardless of the challenges, I think the democratic movements will continue. There is a global problem for democracy, and democracies are challenged at the moment. But I think, like, what is encouraging from India, from my point of view, is how there's a strong history with movements and fighting for democracy. And then a second reply to this, an answer to this question about the future of the constitutional state, is that castes will continue to be part of the politics and also part of the inequalities, but it might change. So these are my few suggestions to this huge topic. So I think I will conclude on that and give the floor back to the chair, and I look forward to your questions, some of which I have received already, some very interesting questions actually. Nice to see you, everyone. So,
the floor is now open for discussion. You can raise your questions or you can type the questions in the chat box.
I would be very happy if somebody would show their face and also to ask questions. I have received some wonderful questions, and I am happy to interact. I have. I could address some of the questions that I received. Would that be?
Yes, sir. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Should I do that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
You can start with the questions already given to you. You got.
Okay, very good. Yeah. Okay, good. So I will read them out, and we could start, and we could get started. I have some 8 questions, and they're very interesting. So it's a privilege for me to interact. It's just a shame that I'm not able to be with you, and but I hope. I mean, I keep my fingers crossed that I will be able to come and visit Kerala. Okay, so I've got one question about me as a Norwegian doing field work to learn about the caste system. And what was my initial impression about the Indian caste system and how it changed after field work? What is the difference between before I started and then after I came? That's a fantastic question. I think, in the sense that I knew about. I had like a very vague understanding of India and the caste, but my starting point was like I explained about the Varna system in the beginning. This was also partly the point of departure that I had. And I also read about small things. But then, as I talked to people and learned lots from very, very interesting people in Kerala too. It's what I've learned is that it's embedded and that it's so complex. It's changing, and also just the difference between Varna, Yatis, and also the complexities within the Yatis. One could add, for instance, in the Adrudadeya community in Tamil Nadu, you have like some migrants from Karnataka and some migrants from Andhra Pradesh, and these are related and constitute different communities within each other. Then, what I've very lately, what has taken some time to understand is how gender is part of caste. This is one of the. I knew it from the beginning, but I'm like in the process of trying to understand it. I do discuss it in terms of the Hindu code bill in the book, and also in for women. But this is the question that I would like to address more. So it's like it's constantly coming. So for me, it's a big curiosity I have. It's so complex. So the complexities are evolving. I think that's basically it. So I moved from just inequality to more like more nuanced understanding and understanding the different layers. Then the second question was during the Independence Day celebrations this year, there was a Dalit woman in Attapakam village in Tamil Nadu who was denied right to hoist the national flag by her colleagues, starting concern over over COVID-19. This is I checked this case, and it's when I got this question, and it's correct. It's an important case, and it also reflects exactly. And then a very interesting question to me is, as a and I'm very fortunate to get this question, as a political scientist who worked on the relationship between caste and law, how will you respond to this situation? I think this is a very interesting question also because it tells if I should be a political scientist and just do elections, for instance, I will election studies, I will not be able to address this properly. So what I think is important is to understand that there's a difference between the official documents and the official statements and the declaration that we are all equal. That is problematic when it comes to practices that in a situation like this, where people who are elected are not able to follow up their obligations or their job, which means it tells me that in order to understand the public policy, one needs to know about what caste is about, and then one needs also to do ethnographic research, which means basically to interact with people. Okay, so then I have a very good case, and it shows also, I mean, the way that the dilemma with citizenship. You could declare that everybody is equal citizen, but still you have inequalities among people. And so in this case, there is a title of a book called Untouchable Citizens, and this is like a good case of that. An illustration of it. So I have, and then I feel very fortunate that some of you have been reading my work. So I'm honored and very happy to get questions like this. So the third question is somebody who has been reading my article "Race as a Political Frontier Against Caste," which is a discussion of the World Conference Against Racism and how the Indian foreign policy is developed to address this. So the idea in the World Conference Against Racism in 2001 is that one should talk about intolerance and xenophobia and racism across the globe. And then the Indian government didn't want caste to be included. So and there were a lot of debates about this. So I looked into why is this a debate. So I wanted to understand why this was important. So what I noticed is that the Indian government doesn't want caste to be part of human rights law in order to avoid further scrutiny on caste. Then what is interesting also, if you compare caste in India with the Roma question in Europe, is that if you with UNDP documents, you could look at how the Roma question in Europe is important for the integration of Europe. I mean, you have a population which is excluded in Europe, and you don't have like scheduled caste policies as you have like in the constitution, but it's been highlighted in the UNDP as a possibility to create inclusion. Then there's rarely something at the international level about caste as such. So I mean, this is a big question which I would be happy to come back to. Perhaps there are some others who would like to pose the following up questions, or yeah. So I if I should go through all of them, I will use a lot of time. So perhaps perhaps you could ask. I wish I had more time to go through them, but perhaps we could open the floor and somebody could speak when you have the, yeah, if there is a question.
I have a question. Initially, caste was just a structure intended to address the problem of division of labor. But over time, it has progressed into a structure with limited social mobility and a structure that legitimizes oppression. Even after 70 years of independence, India is still struggling to propose a one-step solution, or at least a viable solution that can address this issue. And with the advent of right-wing politics, this has become even more difficult. So how do you think the politics of the present address the caste issue, and how far is caste inequality persisting in India today? And also, sir, I have another question, that is, India's constitution provides an option to change a person's religion on his will, but does not give an opportunity to change his or her caste. What are your views on it, sir? That's my question.
Yeah, these were 3 questions. I think if you could help me to remind me about this last one. That's great. These are. I mean, I think you could have given a good lecture on this yourself. So I will try to. Ask. I think the first question regarding scheduled caste or the caste in the current situation with the right-wing government is quite significant. What I think is that with caste is significant both in terms of the political mobilization and which is in a sense it's their part of the rhetoric behind anti-national. I mean, in a sense, then one could use this as I mean, it's far more than caste, but it's related to caste, and one tends to affirm certain values related to caste in speaking about the state as a Hindu nation. So one reduces the diversity and creates some loyalties to the state. Then to the notion that India should be understood according to certain values. Then your question about caste and if we could link it up to the policies, I think that some of these policies that we witness today have been going on for a long period of time, also starting much before, I mean, before the BJP government. So you have ongoing discussions. I mean, first of all, you have ongoing discussions with underprivileged scheduled castes, and these are arguing in court. So there could be some development on that. I don't think it will come very far because it's, I mean, it might. And then, so it might also be a challenge for the Dalit community. It might also succeed on this point. Then I think the whole notion of reservation is challenged and has been challenged from major castes like the powerful castes like the Jats, Patel and Marathi in Maharashtra. These are like using their power to get to change the reservation policies, and these processes have been there over time. But I think what is very significant, something could happen with in this process, and you have like some leeway within the states to make some changes in the backward caste sections. So that's the power of the state. So it depends on the decisions made in the state. But what is very significant, I think, and the starting point, I mean, the introduction of the Constitution, the Citizenship Amendment Bill is almost like a violation of equality. It doesn't fit with equality, and it's basically in the articles about equality that you have reservation. So if you start playing around with and denying equality in this sense, you introduce a system of inequality in the Constitution, which challenges the very the very foundation of the Constitution. So and the reservation policies are right there. So it's a challenge to a long-term policies. I mean, they might also support a reservation. Okay, so please, you should remind me about the second questions, if you can bear with me, the second and the third question.
Yeah, sure, sir. My question was India's constitution provides an option to change a person's religion on his will. We have Article 25, which grants a scope to profess, practice, and propagate any religion we think that is suited for us. But the Constitution doesn't give us an opportunity to change our caste. And since caste is the threshold, caste is a threshold of opportunity to exploit and is always been the bottom line of inequality. So if we could have provided caste or a change of caste as a fundamental right, don't you think that we could have eliminated so much inequality? Not even I'm not suggesting a perfect society, but we could have made a near perfect society if caste wasn't existing. And and I have always thought about this, that if we have provided this provision that caste, without caste, our Constitution would have been paradise of opportunity, and India would have been the best country you can ever see. So my question was that what are your views on it?
Yeah, I think these reflections, I mean, are very interesting, and I think I mean, I think I mean in all societies you have like systems of hegemony. So we also have, like in our country, we have like minorities who have been oppressed historically. We have like an indigenous group called the Samis in the northern part of the country, which has been subject to majoritarian policies. And then they have like negotiated some space now. They have some political power and some autonomy, but that's along territorial lines. But I think caste, as you say, I mean, in the Constitution is fantastic. It's very interesting, actually. So this is something which has been, I mean, something which has been very exciting for me to work on the Indian Constitution, because it's such an ambitious project in addressing and trying to create the foundation for a society as it is. So I agree with you that I mean that in the Constitution is a very interesting and very good framework, but at the same time it has also some elements which we if we just look at equality, we might not identify some of the leeway for violence and so on. But I mean, here there's more questions for research. But but I think you have a long history just in Kerala too, with Ainkali, with anti-caste movements. So you have a long history going back to the 19th century, and I think that's still vibrant and a very significant tradition. I'm not sure if I could give a satisfactory, if this is a satisfactory response to your question, but I think, I mean, basically that's how it would be, and that's basically how I think about it. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, sir, for answering. And I will try to read your book as soon as possible.
Thank you, and I would be grateful to learn from your reading. I mean, because if it doesn't make sense for you, I will be keen to learn from you. But I hope that the book should also provide some inputs on precisely on the things that you are raising.
Yes, sir, I will definitely read on it, and I am a civil service aspirant too, so I should be aware of these issues from multiple perspectives as well. So thank you for providing, and for the St. John's College also, and my friend Yadu Chandran, who suggested me this webinar, and a very happy, very productive timing, I should say, that this quarantine has been a hell of unproductive things, and I'm happy that at least 1 hour I was productive in this quarantine. So thank you, sir, for your very informative session, and I shall try to contact you if I have read your book as well. Thank you, sir.
Thanks. Thank you so much. Thank you. Good.
So Neetu S. Shaji has raised a question in the chat box. I'll read out for you. Sir, can you explain about persistence of caste, the Khairlanchi murder, and India's hidden apartheid?
Yeah. Okay. This is the title of the book of Teltumde, Anand Teltumde, who is now in prison for some very dubious reasons. I mean, Teltumde has been quite significant as an author, and has been writing significant case studies and histories about caste and caste-based violence. And he's been explaining in detail about the Khairlanchi case. I think what he explains about in the book is the persistence of caste is what he does, and what I do too, is to look at Ambedkar, who is trying to understand why, trying to explain about why caste persists, and what Teltumde does, and what many of us have been doing, is to trying to explain what happened in these atrocities. What I do is to introduce a different term to explain about the presence of caste, which is that caste persists as like in racial discrimination, it's a matter of consciousness, and with the persistence of my term in the book, which I'm introducing, is two terms, related terms. I explain about this as an ontological drive of caste, as a belief in caste, as a matter of like not only identity but as an ontology, and the grip of caste. What happened in Khairlanchi was also a reflection about how there's a failure of the police and the legal system to help the victims. So it was a family who was attacked and brutally beaten and murdered. But the husband, when he wanted to report it at the police station, he was asked to sit and wait until they could record his explanation. So what this reflects is also how there are problems in making sure that the victims are given the best treatment at that early level just after the incident. This reflects another problem with the inequalities and how the state relates to the oppressed. I discuss it in my book as well, and Tiltumda has also many details about this. And it's also like the Civil Liberties Committee in Maharashtra has written reports on Kelanji. But in order to understand this case, one needs, I think, to look at the facts, but also to try to learn from one who tried to develop a theory to explain about this, which is Ambedkar, and I think what I would be happy to do is to link that up with larger development in social and political theory in globally. So in order to, because I think I have more to learn from that. I hope it was somehow a reply that is satisfactory. Okay.
Thank you, sir. It was a great section. So many participants have commented on the chat box that it was a very informative and productive session.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed. So I wonder if time is up and we should conclude. I hope that again, I've been saying it a couple of times, that I will be happy to come to Kerala and to interact with you on this. I think you have very significant people thinking on these questions. So it's been an honor for me to interact with you, and I hope to see at least some of you in the future as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Professor Berg, for spending time with us and sharing your insights. I express my heartfelt gratitude to you on the behalf of Department of Political Science and Public Administration, St. John's College, Anchal.
Thank you very much indeed. So, okay, so thank you so much, and take good care, and good luck with your series, and congratulate. I congratulate you all on this very interesting session with Kristin Plus and Samson on Friday. So all the best, and greetings from Norway. So all the best. Goodbye.
Thank you, sir. Goodbye.
Goodbye.